City Current. Produced by Dakota Media Access. In-depth discussion with Bismarck and Mandan city officials. Watch on Government Access Channel 602 HD or tune in to Radio Access 102.5 FM. Always local, always current.
Welcome to City Current Bismarck edition with Bismarck City Administrator Jason Tomanek. Jason, good to see you. I noticed it's greening up a little bit around town, although we need a little bit more rain.
I'm jealous of a few yards that are already showing their green hue, and mine is not. But I did notice we have a tree in our backyard with little buds on it, so
all right.
it's official.
Yeah.
We'll take it. I'm sure there will be snow at some point in the not too distant future.
We've gotten by pretty well this winter, that's for sure. So it wouldn't surprise me if we got a big dump. But it won't stick around, right?
No, and it would be full of moisture, which is what we really need at this point.
Absolutely.
It's very dry everywhere, concerningly dry.
Coming off of last night's City Commission meeting, we have some topics. I just wanted to throw them at you. What we'll be talking about today, there was an evening of proclamations, and we'll go over those. A couple of the big items, I think, and leading up to next week's workshop meeting, the Event Center Improvement Plan report from Jeff Ubel, and then the Event Center Management report from JLL. Really interesting stuff going on there. And then legislative update, I just wanted to highlight that you gave last night also includes the public library bill that you said has gone on to the governor. I don't know if he's signed it or...
I just checked
Okay,
again.
well, we'll make people wait for the latest on that as you just checked.
Cliffhanger.
It's a cliffhanger on City Current. Well, let's talk about those proclamations. 5 of them last night, starting with Arbor Day.
Arbor Day. And it's kind of proclamation season. We see a lot of reoccurring proclamations year over year, and we're glad to put these out for the mayor and the city commissioners to support. Arbor Day, obviously that's a great one for us. We've been Tree City USA for more than 50 years. There's a lot of requirements that go into being a Tree City USA, but proclaiming Arbor Day, that's a regular reoccurrence for us, recognizing the importance of planting trees in the community, especially here on the windswept prairies of North Dakota. And then also we've got some Arbor Day celebrations that are coming up as well that we'll talk about at the end of the show after the announcement.
After the big announcement and I think I heard last night, if I'm right, in Bismarck we've celebrated or commemorated Arbor Day over 40 years, and I guess I had never learned through the years that this all started in Nebraska. So some interesting history.
Yeah, the first year they proclaimed Arbor Day, I think the state of Nebraska planted over 1 million trees. So good for
impressive.
Them. That's an effort.
And that would have been way back when. Another proclamation, the Day of Prayer.
Yep, definitely. That's another another local proclamation recognizing some groups that are part of the first prayer of the Continental Congress in 1774, opening every session of the House of Representatives and Senate with an invocation. And so recognizing the Day of Prayer is May 1st, 2025. That was another one of the proclamations that Commissioner Cleary, who ran the meeting last night, because the mayor was out of town, but he participated electronically. So Commissioner Cleary got to proclaim that, as well as May is Historic Preservation Month.
Something near and dear to you, I know.
It makes me smile. But also as an organization, we of course have the Historic Preservation Commission, which is a volunteer committee that is supported by the staff in the Community Development Department. And so Lauren Oster came forward and talked about some of the things that will be going on throughout the month of May. Whether it be Founders Day with the Bismarck Historical Society. There's a couple of different programs that are coming up, but we certainly want to remind people that history is an important part of Bismarck as well, and not just Bismarck, but North Dakota and the United States. And then another annual proclamation, and this is a very deserving and worthwhile cause, is the Law Enforcement Memorial Week. And of course, locally we've had officers that have lost their lives in the line of duty, and we never want to forget the sacrifices that they make. And so it's nice to recognize the Law Enforcement Memorial Week. And then probably the biggest one last night was for CHI St. Alexius celebrating 140 years.
And we did some math.
We did. We didn't take out the calculator, but we did do some math before. St. Alexius is older than the state of North Dakota.
Yeah, and
Which
by
is great.
4 years,
4 or
like
5
4 or
years,
5 years.
I believe. Yeah, 1885 was St. Alexius. 1889 was statehood. And so there's a number of things that St. Alexius is going to be doing over the year to raise awareness to the 140 years of healthcare that they have committed to, and a great partner in this community, whether it be for healthcare or for employment. They've been employers of tens of thousands of residents in the Bismarck-Mandan community over those years, and so thanks to them. Congratulations to them as well. It's a very notable distinction. We don't have a ton of businesses in this community that
No.
can say they've been around that long.
That long and provided so much, as you indicated. Commissioner Cleary did, she got to, her voice was everywhere at the beginning of the meeting last night. A lot of reading, but as you said, 5 well-deserved proclamations. And yes, tipping our hat to law enforcement, as you mentioned, for all they provide. The consent agenda was pretty, without...
A couple items pulled. I think
Yeah.
Commissioner Risch pulled one item from the airport's items on the consent agenda. It was a bid for some security service work that needed to be done out there. They asked to have that pulled, no action taken on that. And then there was another item that was discussed. There was a resident from just outside city limits that spoke on an item relating to the vacation of a non-access line
Right.
on a property off of Tandem and I'm going to forget the other cross street. It's in the Midwest Business Park, just on the east side of Bismarck on 52nd Street and Main Avenue.
Right.
And the concern that was raised by the citizen was there's development proposed for this particular piece of property, and this is in a, as the name implies, a business park. Large buildings, the UPS sorting facility is out there. The proposed use that is intended for the property is a new location for Midco, and so they would have some storage area. They would have about a 10,000 square foot office on there. The concerns that were raised were relating to access and visibility and exterior storage. In the end, the commission discerned that although the residents' concerns, certainly not trying to diminish any of that, the request that was on the agenda last night was to essentially move a non-access line closer to 52nd Street. And essentially, what does that translate to? It means the driveway for the property will be further away from 52nd Street. So there's less traffic conflict that way. It gives better flow for the site so vehicles can move in and out. There's 2 access points for that particular property. And despite the concerns of the resident that shared her thoughts, the commissioners did vote to vacate the non-access line, essentially moving forward with the development process the development project as it was proposed.
And moving to the regular agenda, a couple of really interesting nuggets from last night. The Bismarck Event Center Capital Improvements Plan report from Jeff Ubel.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that this is evaluating studies and projects proposed and looking at infrastructure needs. And this goes way, the Civic Center, the Event Center has been around a long time.
1969, it was first opened. So just over 50 years it's been around, and some of the infrastructure in the building is original. We've got boilers, some of the HVAC stuff is in there from 1969, and so Jeff and his team put together a nice report, and the report was generated by looking at the variety of studies and reports that have been done over the past few years, but then also talking with the staff, walking the building, looking at all the equipment that is there, and they kind of categorized the needs into maybe three arrangements. One was a new ballroom area, modernization, fixing ADA compliance things, and then also deferred maintenance. So new space, modernization, deferred maintenance. When they started to assemble the components of those 3 categories, it became apparent that the deferred maintenance needed to be the top priority. And so Jeff put together kind of a strategy on which area to focus on first. And ultimately, no decisions were made by the commissioners last night, just a lot of information shared that will really tee up, as you alluded to earlier, the special City Commission meeting that will be on Tuesday, April 29th at 5:15. The commissioners will have essentially 2 items on their agenda to talk about, work through, direct staff on next appropriate steps. this being the first piece of it, the capital improvements plan for the event center.
And deferred maintenance isn't the sexiest thing. It's stuff that, as you mentioned, most people won't notice. But like HVAC, I think you said some of those boilers are original to the building from 1969. Everybody can do the math at home. But these are essential items to build for the future of the event center.
Essential and expensive, unfortunately. The estimate for the HVAC modernization alone, spanning it over 3 years, design and construction, we're talking about $15 million worth of improvements. And some might say, well, how is that going to get done? Well, what I can share is that the City of Bismarck collects an additional sales tax. It's called the Lodging, Liquor, Restaurant Tax. And so, as the name implies, lodging, hotel accommodations, liquor, alcoholic beverages, and restaurant, food and beverage. There's an additional sales tax on those items. And a portion of that sales tax is intentionally dedicated and exclusively dedicated to capital improvement projects at the event center. And so the City of Bismarck has some cash on hand in reserves that has been identified to help start this project. But then as the plan moves forward and the years go by, there may be some times where we would have to incur a little bit of debt. We could borrow from ourselves through reserves. But in the end, through the work that Jeff and his team have prepared, and then also our finance director, Dmitry Chernyak, and the city's comptroller, Eric Lund, and the finance team, there is a pretty clear plan of how this can be successfully accomplished over about a 10-year time span. And so we'll get into more of that on the 29th, but I think what I wanted the audience to hear is that, yes, there are some major improvements to the building. Some of them you won't recognize firsthand, but then there are things that will be very apparent. There are parts of the building that will be refreshed, whether it be carpet, paint, signage. Jeff kind of touched on that a little bit last night. There really hasn't been a unified approach to signage throughout all the facilities within the Bismarck Event Center. And having some of those forward-facing improvements, I think, is very important because the public can identify with, hey, that's different than the last time I was here. But it's also extremely important for us to have building systems that are maintainable, functioning, efficient, and just make the operations of the facility that much easier for the staff that's there every day.
So a separate but related report last night came on management and operations of the event center from a representative from JLL. And that also was very interesting. The point that came up toward the end with Commissioner Zenker was one of the findings from this report, and it's a finding, right? They haven't, nothing's been decided, is that they recommended a third-party operator come into play with the event center management. We can get to that in a second, I guess, but what were some of the highlights that you took from the JLL report?
I think some of the takeaways is the report, although it does have a very impactful recommendation at the end, it's a much different approach than how we've done things. I think if you step back and look at the report for what it is, the first bullet point, the first clear objective was that things cannot stay the same. The operations of the event center need to be adapted to mesh with current standards and practices. And so how do we do that? Well, there's a number of different ways that can be done. And through the recommendations and through the reporting and the work that JLL did, there will be scenarios that the commissioners will talk through and consider at the meeting on the 29th. It's not as simple as just saying, we want to hire a third party to operate this facility. That's not how this is going to work. And to Commissioner Zenker's point, we just got done talking about a very impactful capital improvements plan to fix the building, to refresh the building, and then to simply turn it over to a third party and let them run it. I understand his concerns. I agree with those concerns. And so getting to the next step, what is the right next formula? That's really the purpose of the meeting on the 29th, is to discern how, through all of these different options, all of these different models, what's the best one for Bismarck? Because just simply turning it over to a third party and saying, well, good luck, that can't work. And so one of the scenarios that was discussed a little bit last night was this idea of creating an event center authority. And it becomes an advisory board that is, on an organizational chart, it would be between the staff and the city of Bismarck. So the city would create a contract to create an authority and then have a contract with that authority, and that authority would then be responsible and contractually obligated to work with a private vendor or a private operator of the event center. So the city would still own the building. The city still, is in charge of the building. It's still the city's resources. It's still the city's dollars. It's simply working with an entity that is their forte. That is what they focus on. That is the work that they do. There's a handful of these groups throughout the nation that could be considered, for the work here in Bismarck. I think one thing that's important to know is that when you work with a third-party operator, that's their role. They have many other venues and facilities around the nation or hopefully around the region. And when you work with a third party, you can benefit from some of the skill sets that are within that organization as well. And so I don't want to pretend I know what the answer is going to be after the meeting on the 29th. I think it's going to be a great discussion. There's a lot of information for the commissioners to consider. We will be taking both reports that were provided at the meeting on Tuesday night and including those in the agenda packet for Wednesday. So for anybody listening or watching that wants to see these full reports, go back and read the information. They will be attached to the agenda. So go to the City of Bismarck website.
That's being put together today in your office?
Correct. That is one of the major roles of our office, is to build the agenda packet to support the City Commission meetings. The staff and I talked about it this morning. We've got Dimitri and his team working on some financial information that will be included as well. We want the commissioners to have as much information as they can so they can make the most well-informed decision on how to best move forward for the Bismarck Event Center, for the staff, for the community. I think that's another thing I need to mention, is that the staff is currently city employees, and they are very much a part of this organization. And I believe it was the mayor that noted it is not his intention to harm the employees in any way. In fact, it's quite the contrary. How do we best protect and preserve the employees that are here today and help them do the best jobs that they can going forward? I think that was the impetus for much of the work that's been going on over the past 6 months. I think that is still the driving force in all of this, is that we want to treat our employees like humans. That's first and foremost. But the City Commission, the City of Bismarck, has a responsibility to effectively manage and operate the event center, so it is a vital asset within our community.
And to the Commissioner's anchor, I think that was one of his concerns, the 25 employees or so that are City of Bismarck employees, and that their future isn't uncertain. But
correct.
So there was some emotion attached to that part of the meeting last night. The mayor did chime in, as you said, and I think brought that perspective. And then, as we all know, these are not final decisions at this point.
Good point.
They're works in progress.
Yep. No decisions have been made. The commissioners now have essentially 6 days to go back and evaluate the information that both Jeff Hubel and Dan Fenton with JLL shared. I would trust that the commissioners are going to be sharing that information and talking with their advisors and constituents and people that they go to for perspective. And then my hope is that everybody comes to the meeting on the 29th with the goal of building consensus and making the right decisions to get the event center in the right direction moving forward for everybody.
We have one more graphic I thought it'd be good to show. There's a lot of information on here, but attached to that JLL report, again, some of the key areas of consideration, as it says, include the operational excellence, metrics for performance and reporting. You can read for yourself: sales, food, sustainability, technology, guest experience. All of those things are things that are important, things that are being considered in trying to form this bigger picture moving forward.
And Dan talked about KPIs, or key performance indicators. And what are those? They're essentially metrics that we would use to measure the effectiveness or the value that the event center is adding, but then also using those key performance indicators. And it's things like having the right mix of events, optimizing the facility for its highest and best use. Obviously, income is a big part of a key performance indicator, but is it the only measure? And the answer is no. There's more than a dozen different ways to evaluate the impacts the event center has on the community. And I think it needs to be stated that the event center by itself doesn't always make money, but it makes money for the community by bringing people here for conventions and conferences. Those people stay in hotels, they eat in restaurants, they shop in stores, they support the sales tax that then goes back into supporting the event center. It's a very symbiotic relationship. And so for hotels, restaurants, and retail to do well means the event center should be doing well. And for the event center to do well, we've got to have good hotels and good restaurants. And it's just this, it's a very delicate balance and a very delicate relationship. And we need to make sure that all the components are functioning at their highest level.
We've been talking about the legislature for several, well, we're going into our 4th month, I think, but things are starting to wind down.
Today should be day 68.
68 out of 80.
And they generally want to save a few days for themselves just in case. So I'm not a fortune teller, but I'm thinking by this time next week they're going to be pretty close to wrapping stuff up. Yeah.
Well, House Bill 1020, the State Water Commission budget with the flood control for South Bismarck. What's the latest on that? We'll just go over 3 bills that we've been talking about a lot.
Certainly. House Bill 1020, as you mentioned, State Water Commission budget. This was the bill where the South Bismarck flood control project was identified. Initially, when the session started, we were encouraged to request an ample amount of funding. The total project estimate is about $173 million. The ask from the state, from the city to the state, was about 70 to 80 million. As time went on, as committees met and made decisions, Bismarck's funding for that project slowly got cut and dwindled, and now we're to the point where we're not even on the list yet, or currently. However, as I reported to the commission on Tuesday night, I did have the good fortune of meeting with Senator Sorvag and Representative Swantek, both of Fargo, both on the committees that are evaluating these projects and part of the appropriations. A great discussion, helping them understand the project from our perspective, that it is not a stormwater control project, it is a flood project, and not saying we're going to have flooding, but when we do have high water in the Missouri River, it creates other problems for South Bismarck because the area is so flat, because of the drainage channel that we have. This project that is being proposed, the $173 million flood control project, is a result of FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, coming in and remapping the river corridor, re-identifying new floodplain areas. And so we are simply responding to something that showed up at our front door. And we are still optimistic that through continued conversations and work with state leaders that there is an opportunity for Bismarck to receive some state funding. We would be very grateful for that. But we will continue on the design for the South Bismarck Flood Control Project, and once the design is complete, we will have, as they say, a shovel-ready project from there, should we be able to secure enough funding to make the project happen.
A bill all of us should be interested in is House Bill 1176, and that deals with property taxes and also the cap on what the city of Bismarck, 3% for the city of Bismarck plus growth for your budgeting purposes. I think you said that's moved to conference committee where members from the House and Senate sit down and try and hash things out. I do think Representative Nathy and Bosch from Bismarck are on the conference committee. What's the latest on that bill?
It is scheduled for 3:30 p.m. Wednesday, the day we are recording. 3:30 p.m. they will have the conference committee will be meeting in the House Finance and Taxation room. So Representatives Hedlund, Nathy, and Bosch, and then Senators Weber, Beckett-All, and Erbely will get together and try and build consensus. There have been a number of amendments to the bill since it started. The governor was the first out to say, here's the plan, here's how we get to zero property tax, here's the concept that I support. The House got a hold of it and reduced that primary residential income or tax credit from $1,550 down to $1,450. The Senate got their hands on it and reduced it down to $1,250 and put a cap at 75% on the total exemption, and they called it the skin in the game amendment. Yeah. So we're definitely watching politics at play here, but as a property owner, as a city administrator, we are very, very interested in this one, both personally and professionally. But I again optimistic here that in the end, through good old-fashioned North Dakota work ethic, conversations, the right answer will come about. And I trust that by the time we're done here, the governor will have a bill that he's comfortable signing.
And by the next time you and I visit, we should have an answer.
Yep. You can talk about it with Mr. Neubauer next week. Maybe he'll know the answers.
Senate Bill 2307, we talked about at the beginning. This is the public libraries, which include public schools bill, and a version has passed and is now, where is it? It's on Governor Armstrong's desk, the last I heard.
According to the bill tracker website that the state keeps up on, the bill was delivered to the governor's desk on April 18th, and so it would be up to him now to sign the bill, and then it becomes law, or it would be his choice to veto the bill, and it does not become law. So we are certainly watching this one from the perspective of our library, Bismarck Veterans Memorial Public Library, Department of the City. We have already established a process for patrons when they have concerns about library materials and content. They can bring those concerns to a library professional, and there is a committee that will evaluate and review those materials. And so that is, in many parts, what Senate Bill 2307 is intending to do. It also adds another layer that if the library patron is not satisfied with the results, they can take their concerns to the state's attorney in that county. I certainly can't speak for the Burley County State's Attorney or any other state's attorney in North Dakota, but from where I can see things, our state's attorneys are quite busy dealing with district court matters. And this, although, if it is a state mandate, it is a state law, then obviously they would have to make the time to do that work as well. But this is one that we've been watching very closely. Our library director, Christine Cuiava, has done a great job communicating and coordinating with and keeping her staff well aware of how these things are shaking out. And I guess we will just wait and see what the governor wants to do with this one too.
A few dates we wanted to remind folks of. We have an Arbor Day celebration, May 2nd, 1 o'clock, I believe, at Custer Park.
Custer Park, the oldest park in Bismarck, speaking of Historic Preservation Month. Custer Park is the park, I guess it'd be bookended by Broadway and Thayer, and then you've got Washington Street on the east side and the wonderful Custer Park neighborhood on the west side. There's a number of memorial trees in that park, and this year the recipient of the memorial tree planting will be Stan Churchill. Stan passed away last year. Stan owned a local arbor company and was a longtime member of the Bismarck Forestry Advisory Board. So certainly condolences to Stan's family on his passing, but also a very nice way to commemorate the work that he did to help keep Bismarck beautiful by planting a tree in his honor.
Absolutely. Just reiterating, the April 29th, next Tuesday, the special commission workshop for the event center will be at 5:15, so watch for that. We'll, of course, carry that.
You guys got it. It's a public meeting. It's open to the public, so if anybody wishes to attend, by all means, that is an option of theirs, or if they would rather consume from the comfort of their wherever. Their home, wherever their app works, they can watch the meetings.
Also, we have Keep Bismarck Beautiful cleanup day that the Bismarck Rotary will sponsor. I think folks are meeting over at Peace Park.
Peace Park, which is directly west of the Bismarck Parks and Recreation District office. That is Saturday, May 4th from 9 to noon. I believe the intent is to have everybody start at Peace Park, and then I think they assign areas on where you can go collect trash. You don't necessarily have to sign up, but if you can pre-register, I'm sure they would appreciate knowing. It's a nice event, another sign of spring.
It is.
Getting out and cleaning up garbage, and thanks to the Rotary and all those members and volunteers and everybody that they bring around, because without that effort, we would have lots of loose garbage blowing around.
Something I've participated in, especially up at the Arboretum near Tom O'Leary Golf Course. And it's a lot of fun to get out there, a good family event.
It is.
Get some fresh air.
Yep.
Also, on May 8th, we have the Public Transportation Community Conversation meeting from 6 to 8. Tell us what we're going to talk about.
That is led by the City of Bismarck's Human Relations Committee, which is a volunteer committee that meets monthly. And as the name implies, they are interested in human relations. And in this case, the Community Conversations is a project that they've taken on over the last year and a half or so, typically tied to a specific topic. As you indicated, and this topic is very forward-facing and in the top of mind for a lot of us, and it's public transportation. This is on the heels of the most recent local election in November, where citizens approved a new half-cent sales tax. 2/5 of that half-cent goes towards public transportation. And so there's a transportation steering committee that has been meeting, trying to discern what is the best use, how do we implement these new funds, and where do they go, and how do we improve public transportation. The purpose of the community conversation is just that, to have more voices, add to this very dynamic, very evolving topic. And in the end, the hope, the gain, the result here is the best public transportation that we can offer for Bismarck Banda, and that's both fixed route and paratransit door-to-door route service. So,
also wanted to mention the governor's prayer breakfast is scheduled for May 20th with General Dorman speaking. I guess now he's a part of Governor Armstrong's staff, but you won't want to miss General Dorman or Al Dorman speaking that morning. And the proceeds go to a great cause.
They go to benefit the Crisis Care Chaplaincy, which I always struggle to get those words out without muddling them up. But the Crisis Care Chaplaincy, they are the chaplains that are there when there is a crisis with law enforcement or with a death in the family or any of those challenging situations.
Any one of us could be involved.
And it's not just law enforcement, but also first responders and fire personnel as well. So the work that they do is so important, it's so supportive, and the proceeds raised from the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast on May 20th will go directly to supporting the Crisis Care Chaplaincy and the work that they're doing.
And the mayor interviewed Greg Carr from Crisis Care Chaplaincy, and I can appreciate, being a former TV anchor, the difficulty of saying that phrase. But we both got through it this time.
Yep.
But if you want to see that program, we just wanted to mention that we have 2 new apps, the Dakota Media Access app that you can download, our Radio Access 102.5 app that you can download, and you can scan the QR code there to find where you can get those, and then you can watch everything that we have to offer here at Dakota Media Access. Jason, thanks for the time again. I look forward to visiting in a couple of weeks.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Tom.
See you next time.
For more information on what was discussed in this episode of City Current, visit bismarcknd.gov or call 701-355-1300. If you have suggestions, comments, or issues you would like addressed in future episodes, contact us at info@freetv.org. This program airs on Government Access Channel 2 and 602 in HD, or on Radio Access 102.5 FM. It's also available as a podcast on radioaccess.org and as a video viewing link at freetv.org. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of City Current.